Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of 10 for the Chairman. For those of you that don't know, this is where I take 10 questions from subscribers and answer them to the best of my ability, which I hope is fairly good considering I'm leading the project here. And for those that you don't know about subscribers, that's the subset of the people that have backed Star Citizen that also contribute money every month that enable us to do enhanced community content. So what we're doing here, 10 for the Chairman, Wingman's Hangar, some other upcoming shows we're going to be doing, plus the Jump Point magazine, and also some of the little kind of fun, flary objects that we're putting in your hangar. But subscribers generously contribute money every month to enable us to do a higher degree of community feedback, which is great because we really enjoy sharing everything we're doing, but it sort of pays for a lot of people to do all this behind the scenes. So thank you very much to subscribers. Well, let's get to the show. So just a little small thing before I get into the questions. Had a kind of a cool package show up. A very nice long letter here, so I'm not going to read it all on the show. It's from Thor the Space, aka Soul Song, and he's basically a letter. So this is a model of a spaceship that was found in a box in my old hangar used by my grandfather. Actual size parameters are probably 24 in meters in length, 26.5 width, and 6.3 in height. And it goes on to talk about the various aspects of the ship, and there's a little diagram of the different areas and stuff, if we can all see that. It's pretty cool. And then there's a balsa wood model, which is actually kind of pretty cool. So, you know, they got the gun turrets on the sides that pivots, the engines, so they can also twist down into VTOL mode, which is pretty cool, right? So we can go down to VTOL, and you got the gun turrets that move around. And so anyway, there you go. Thank you, Soul Song. That's very, very cool. All right. And this is the kind of like really cool sort of community involvement that I love. The way that everyone sort of kind of puts themselves already in the world, and there's such great fan fiction already going on, and people building such amazing ships. I mean, obviously on the Next Great Starship, you can see the level of talent, but there's definitely people outside of that that are doing some pretty amazing stuff that you see on the forum. So it's pretty brilliant, actually. So anyway, that's great. So let's get to the questions. So thank you very much, Soul Song, and we'll do the 10 for the Chairman now. Okay, so the first question comes from Ozzy Lanth. Can you tell us what kind of animations are planned for Spaceman shot in ZeroGs while their mag boots are locked down? Will some weapons have enough force to knock someone off a wall and spinning into ZeroG air? I can imagine some weapons may even be designed to mess with an opponent's mag boots with electromagnetic pulses to disable their boots. So this would be really a question for the team that's focusing on the first-person shooter, which we'll be sort of unveiling and showing some of that stuff later on this year, probably at Gamescom. But yeah, we're planning to do a whole bunch of really cool stuff in ZeroG. We already have some ZeroG functionality in, which when you guys get your hands on the Arena Commander, the dogfighting module, you'll actually be able to do some level of EVA after you've ejected, which is pretty cool. But we're going to have sort of grabbing onto surfaces and pushing off on surfaces as part of the design. And I'm assuming that we'll have sort of physical impulses, so if you get a hit, it could potentially knock you off a surface. And so I'm guessing if you had mag boots attached and you got hit, then you would expect to have your boots stay in place as you got hit back unless the force was really big. So all those kind of things are planned to be modeled in, hopefully with as high fidelity as possible. So we'll see, but we're actually kind of excited by just even the first person shooter period. I mean, that's the nice thing about what we're doing here with Star Citizen. It's crazy, it's ambitious, but we're really like delivering 3 or 4 games all rolled into one that hopefully people can play for a long time to come. Okay, next question comes from Odie, who asks, it was mentioned that the NPCs that you hire for your crew will be more skilled in some roles than others. They might be a good gunner, but not as skilled as a pilot. Will we be able to review the resumes of the prospective crew to get an idea of what role they may fit best? So yeah, so I mean, essentially the idea is on some of the NPCs that you hire, you know, there'll be different sort of levels of them, right? The more expensive or the more experienced NPC is probably, you know, if he's a pilot, he's a better pilot. If he's a gunner, a better gunner, and you'll definitely be able to sort of kind of see their status. I mean, I think the way to think about it would be we're not going to do it in an abstract manner like you would typically see in an RPG, where it'd be like, okay, well, this guy's got aiming skill of 20 and this guy's only got an aiming skill of 15. It would be more that you would sort of have the reviews. So sort of think of it like, a hiring board for NPCs, like you get on Craigslist or eBay or something, and you would have, okay, hey, I'm so-and-so and I love to shoot things in my turret, and then there's a bunch of sort of, the equivalent of Yelp reviews where people would be like, oh, he was fantastic, or he's a crack shot, and you would sort of get the idea of the skill level based on sort of the price and sort of the reviews, and some of those reviews would be sort of the in-fiction level of reviews for the NPC. So we'll try and dress up like how good a pilot is based in the fiction of the world, but that will give you an idea. So you won't necessarily know the behind-the-scenes numbers of how skilled they are, but you'll get a good idea of, okay, well, this is an experienced pilot or this is a rookie pilot, and you pay more for the more experienced guys than you do for the rookie ones. But of course, the rookie ones potentially could sort of learn and become the veteran guy over time. Okay, next question comes from Dostro, who asks, I'm just curious about the current relationship between CIG and Crytek currently. How much of the Star Citizen build of the engine going back to Crytek, as it sounds like a considerable amount of effort is being put into it from your end? Double precision, for example, sounds like a massive undertaking for CIG and something that Crytek would benefit hugely from. So we got a really great relationship with Crytek. I mean, we share tech all the time. We're always sort of appraised and looking at their newest stuff, even some stuff that they haven't released generally to the public or shown. So we have a really nice relationship. We sort of openly share stuff. So we'll give them some of the stuff that we do back their way, and of course we're taking their sort of upgrades to the engine. Double precision, I don't know. We haven't had that specific discussion. It is a pretty big change because the whole engine works in 32-bit, not double, and there's a fair amount of things that have to change for that. So I'm not sure they would necessarily want to take that back into their standard engine, because double precision really is needed for a big space game, but not necessarily for a first-person game. But we definitely have an ongoing sort of technology sharing relationship where we go back and forth. Okay, next question comes from Gerlanin, who asks, can you give us a bit more information on how player-created missions will work? Can we just put a bounty on anyone, or do we need certain approval? How will information runners or smugglers know I require their unique skill set? That's a pretty big question. There's a certain level of there'll be this sort of simpler player-created missions where it's like, I need to hire someone to escort me, or I need to hire someone to take, item or items from planet A to planet B. So those are all pretty simple. In terms of hiring someone to putting a bounty on someone, I mean, you can't, in general, there's two levels of it, like in the real world. Like if I decide, okay, yeah, I'm going to pay someone $10,000 to kill someone, well, I can do that, but that's not necessarily legal. I would have to go to some some underworld hitman and pay him, and I can get caught and in trouble for doing that. So in terms of the bounty stuff, I think if you're putting bounties on people that hey, I'll pay you so much to take out this pirate, then you're probably not going to get in trouble with the UEE. But if you put a bounty, you say, I'm going to pay you so much to take out my rival trader or someone I just don't like in this regulated space, then not only does the person that's taken the hit run the risk of getting in trouble, but if someone's commissioned the hit, then potentially you could get in trouble with the UEE. So it all sort of depends on a sort of mission per mission basis, but generally I think there would be a certain amount of missions that players can sort of request from NPCs, and then there's the other level where then you can also request them from other players, and then you probably would be able to have sort of a more nuanced mission to other players, because obviously you're not dealing with an AI or an NPC. See, the last part of the question is, how will information runners or smugglers know I require their unique skill set? So, I think it all sort of depends. Because there'll definitely be cases where, getting information or a data packet from one place to another part of the universe is very important, and there potentially will be people that are trying to prevent that data packet from getting there. So it really is sort of like kind of a courier mission is really kind of what the information runner missions are like. And a lot of times if we generate them, then potentially will be, say, another corporation trying to block that information, so there'll be some conflict along the way. And then, on the smugglers set, Things like a smuggler, or again, like putting out a hit on someone, which really is sort of like placing a bounty on someone, unless you're placing a bounty on someone that's on the wanted list. That's where you would go to the shady areas on the various planets. So, a lot of our planets have, like Terra, for instance, has a sort of more kind of shady, sort of slum area versus a more hoity-toity area, and you would sort of go to one of the back alleyways or one of the sort of disreputable bars, and that's where you would sort of find someone that you could sell or buy stuff on the black market, or do smuggling missions, or potentially take a hit out for you. So it'll be sort of kind of based on the environment and context, just like it kind of would be in real life. So we just want to really give that sense of flavor to all the locations when you're going around it. I mean, it's not going to be a small amount of work, but I think if you get all that, I think this will be a much cooler, more engrossing world for everyone. Okay, next question comes from Quick with a Q, so QYIK. Says, when Star Citizen goes live, will players still be able to buy UEC with real money? And if so, how will you be able to keep the economy balanced when players can print their own in-game money? Thanks to the whole team involved in putting this masterpiece together. Quick one. So when the game goes live, we will let players buy some UEC with real money. I think we've stated before that we're going to put a cap on that. Whether it's a daily or a monthly amount, it'll be a certain fixed amount that you'll be able to put into the system, and that's really to allow. A couple of things. One, once the game's out, since we're not charging a subscription, we need to figure out some way to bring some revenue in so we can keep the servers up, and we can also be adding content as we go on, because our plan is to continually add more and more features and more content, and it's space, so it's kind of infinite, so we can keep on building it out and making it just a lot more going on there, and we really want to make it very reactive to what the players are doing, which will require quite a lot of sort of game master staff and people dedicated to sort of building content that riffs off what the players are doing in the universe. So you need money to do that. So our sort of revenue plan, if you want to call it, is new players are coming in and basically buying their initial package, or existing players that maybe don't have 20 hours a week to be flying around and adventuring and making money, but they've got a few hours on the weekend, and they really like that cool ship and they just want to fly it, and so they don't mind spending a little money to buy the UEC. And the philosophy of the game is that there is nothing in the game that you can only buy with money. Like basically you can earn everything playing the game, but you can also purchase some credits and sort of shortcut having to spend the time running missions to earn some money. And by the way, running missions is the fun part of the game, right? So that's not like a grind like it would be on most of the games that would sort of have this kind of thing. That's the core. That's the core of what Privateer was. That's the core of what Freelancer was. But we do recognize that there's people like myself who are now older, and I don't have all the time in the world, and so sometimes I don't mind paying a little bit for convenience, I guess would be the way to say it. So those are the two ways that we think that we'll be able to generate enough revenue to keep basically the servers on, content flowing back into it. But as to the question of whether it's going to unbalance the game, because we're limiting it, and because there's also a whole bunch of sort of real world simulation of dynamics to the universe. So for instance, there's a cost to doing business. There's landing tariffs, there's sales taxes, your equipment, basically has wear and tear over time. You can see it sort of get older, and then you've got to maintain it, and you've got to fix it up occasionally. So all these things take money to have happen, and so essentially they sort of will balance out. But even with people bringing new money into the system, these things will sort of take a little bit of money out. And then of course the other big concept is that the player base in this universe is only a small portion of what we're really simulating. So we're estimating that the player base will be no more than 10% of kind of the economy we're simulating and the number of AI or NPCs that are running around on a big meta basis. And so at that point you don't have a large group of people. So if someone comes in and everyone decides to buy some UEC, which they're not going to do, they still wouldn't be able to bring enough in that would really effectively unbalance the economy based on what the other sort of credit sinks are happening in the economy, and just the ratio of real players to NPC players, and the fact that we also limit the stuff. So that's what our plan is. I mean, obviously we're not at that point yet, so it could have some flaws, but we think that it's a pretty good approach to take at the moment. Okay, next question comes from Commandox. can you explain how bigger battles will work? I am specifically interested in how the refueling, replacing ammunition, and repair works during bigger battles. Do we have to land on a carrier, or there are some other ways? In the bigger battles, I mean, that's kind of one of the ideas of having sort of the bigger ships that have sort of landing capacity. So you could potentially land your fighter on board and refuel it, rearm it, potentially do some patch-up repairs, because the full repairs would have to be done on the planet. We're thinking about not dogfight that's coming out right away, what we're calling Dogfight V1.1, that will have some platforms. I think Dan was teasing it when he was doing a little dogfight reveal, because we have it in our internal test stuff where you later in later game modes you could land, and then you could sort of rearm and refuel your ship and get back out there in the combat, because obviously some level of the ammunition you use, ballistic weaponry missiles are consumable finite, right? And then there's fuel, which will be consumed mostly by your afterburners. And so we're going to actually put some of that in the dogfighting module, not right away, but down the road is one of the things to do. And then and that's really just laying the groundwork for sort of the bigger battles, because when players will have a bigger ship like a frigate or destroyer or whatever the bigger ships will be, you'll be able to land and do kind of the same thing. And then also we're going to have some level of ships that potentially could do sort of in-flight refueling or that kind of stuff, or would have some level of repair ability. So those are all things we're thinking about to try and make, say, some bigger battles where you sort of have mixed use of arms. You've got a couple of big capital ships and then some fighters, and people have to do all sorts of different things in it. It should be pretty cool. I mean, that's one of the things that the UK team will be spearheading, is sort of the bigger ship stuff, because it's a primary driver of Squadron 42. So they're sort of working on that as we speak, as well as helping out in the dogfight. Okay, so next question comes from Neo Onyx 13, who asks, has there been any hardcore discussion on how Star Citizen will be funded after the verse goes gold and the PU is fully operational? I fully understand that this question is a tad bit early at this point in development, but I was interested in whether there was any progress being made in this area. Okay, so I basically answered this question when I answered Quick's question about the UEC money, because I sort of did it two parts, explained why we wanted the real money, and essentially said what our funding methods were, which were once we're live, then our sort of goal is to bring enough revenue in by new people joining and buying their ship package, or existing players that don't have the time to spend, playing around building up enough money, then they just want to buy some cool fancy ship or something, so they're going to spend some real money on UEC, but UEC is going to be, that ability will be limited, time limited for all players, so no one can just buy a ridiculous amount. And of course, everything in the game you will be able to earn. There's no sort of artificial barrier between something you can buy with money or something you can buy with your time, essentially. So if you have time equals money, there you go. So we just sort of view them as fairly interchangeable. But that's how we're thinking of funding the verse. Maybe it's crazy. Maybe that won't bring in enough money. But I'm hoping it will, because I'm not a big fan of sort of monthly, like forced monthly subscription. I don't mind it sort of being an optional thing that you do. But we'll see. But our goal is to hopefully have something that's strong enough that brings in enough money that allows us to continue to add features, build out the universe. We've talked things about like procedural generation, all this kind of stuff. So and also just a high level of interaction with the players, and make them part of the universe and react to the actions they do. And so all that will require a decent sized team even after we go gold. I mean, this is a online game, so it's much more I know it's the trendy thing to say now, but it's more a game as a service than a sort of one-off game that you'll play for a week and then put on your shelf. And so for us, it's pretty important to right now make sure that we've got enough money to make it, which you guys have been so generous and helped us. We've got a great amount of money, and more comes in, which is great, because that just allows us to do more stuff and make it bigger and better, because that's kind of our goal, is to just make this as cool as possible. And then after we sort of have the all the features are in and working, you can fly fully around the universe and do all the rest of stuff, then hopefully continued revenue comes in and allows us to just continue to big it and expand it, which is pretty much what I think you've seen on things like EVE Online or World of Warcraft. So hopefully we can be in, if we're lucky enough, we can be in that situation and just keep on building this really cool universe together. Okay, so next question comes from Wokels, Wokkels, who says, we have heard rumors of Star Citizen as an eSports. Also that the Arena Commander can be used for it. Do you have any plans on supporting eSports in the sense of promoting it on the website? And hopefully more ideas. Yeah, well, so I mean, actually our kind of thought is, it's like, there's a lot of potential inside Star Citizen. So Arena Commander definitely would be something that would be a place where people could essentially compete and show off the dogfighting skills without having to risk their actual ship in the way that you would actually out in the persistent universe. And then, we've got some other things that we're thinking about. We've had a lot about Murray Cup racing, and we've sort of been focusing. We've got some races, and we want to do a race course. We'll probably release something with Arena Commander, not V1.0, but just after that we'll have some timed racing courses and stuff that you can fly your ships in, which I think will be pretty cool. And both those things could be very suited to sort of that esports setup. I think what we would probably do is, because we always like to do everything that's in fiction, is to sort of have the esports part of it sort of almost feel like in fiction. So if you're competing to be the best dogfighter, or you're competing to be the fastest racer, you're really competing in the Murray Cup in our universe. So you're competing in some big fictional, the invitational tournament or whatever for the dogfighting. So we'll sort of do esports in our universe. So kind of like Inception, one level inside something else. But yes, we think that would be fun. We're also going to do a certain amount of support for people to watch stuff. So not right away, but we're looking at ways that we can have sort of windows onto action. So like you can maybe log into the website and see like some cool battle happening out in space. And definitely if we have like a competition or esports thing, we'd figure out ways to broadcast the combat or ways to broadcast the racing. And maybe once the persistent universe is up and running, you could even be in a bar in the persistent universe looking on the TV and see basically our Twitch broadcast of that you could also see direct on our website. So hopefully that sounds cool, but that's kind of what we're thinking about. Okay, so the next question comes from Skade, who asked, knowing that we will be able to name our ships and probably put decals on them, I wish to know if those ship names will be unique, because if not, I'm afraid there will be all encounters, 25 Millennium Falcons and 15 Enterprises a day in the persistent universe. And if the ship's name will indeed be unique, then will there be any chance that a ship may become more famous than its pilot? Okay, so that's a good question. I don't know on the ship naming whether you make it unique. I mean, in the real world, I don't actually believe, I could be wrong, but I think that lots of people could name their ship Chris or Chris One. So we may end up, not having it unique. We haven't made a particular decision about it, because the thing is, if you make it has to be unique, then you get people going things like Millennium Falcon 482 ABC, which also is kind of a bit immersion breaking. So we're probably going to let people sort of name their ships how they want to name them and not make them unique. Of course, every ship will have a unique ID code, sort of the VIN number in our world that will sort of identify it. But I don't know. I think if someone becomes really badass and has customized a certain ship, then maybe they can become more famous than its pilot or other ships of the same name. All right, so last question comes from Furuta, who asks, what type of science will we be able to perform in the game aside from ship optimization? Will we be able to perform analysis of the artifacts or items that we find and gather more information about them? Will there be any way for us to perform tests on new interesting forms of life that we find throughout the verse? Thanks. Well, we actually have sort of an exploration kind of science ship. We'll definitely be able to do ship optimization, overclocking, all the rest of stuff. I think there'll be some level of sort of explorer, artifact hunting, searching stuff, which we haven't fully fleshed out yet, but we got this whole sort of like salvage and explorer mechanic. We've got some ships specifically for it. We're going to have some sort of space hulks and some ancient ruins and ancient, space wrecks from long ago space civilizations. And so there'll be some cool stuff that you'll be able to get some equipment and you'll be able to take that and maybe take it somewhere else and essentially get it built into some special weapon that or special item that will give you some abilities or powers that you may not necessarily have with the standard off-the-shelf stuff. So I think there'll be that level of stuff. I don't know exactly the mechanics of it because we're still at early stages of working it out, but we definitely want to have that sort of varied feeling, right? So there's a whole profession you could just go where you're going and exploring and looking for artifacts, and maybe occasionally there'll be one or two of them that will be useful and they can be used for something else, or at least you could sell them. So, so there'll be some level of analysis. So we'll see. As far as life forms go, I don't know. There's the fiction in our world is that finding or interacting with new life forms is kind of regulated, so you're not really meant to be able to discovering them. We're going to have a kind of fun commercial up and coming, not the freelancer one, but the one afterward that kind of plays with this idea. But I don't know so much about like really discovering new life forms, although we have discussed that when we introduced one or two of the new sort of alien races we're discussing, we would actually let a player make the first encounter. So we'll build it all up, we wouldn't announce it, we would basically open up an area of space, and one of the first players that would cover that jump point and go through it would actually sort of encounter this alien race for the first time. So, but that's not something that will be possible for all the players, it would be just possible for one player, or if we have a second one, another player. So, and that wouldn't be very frequent, but that would be super cool, where the person that made the encounter was actually a real player, and he gets immortalized in the Galactopedia and on our in-fiction news casts. So anyway, I hope that answers the question about the science. I mean, it's still got a little work and thinking to be done on it, but that brings us to the end of this episode of 10 for the Chairman. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to all the backers out there for generously backing the game to the level that you have, which is allowing us to make this game at a level beyond what I dreamed what it can be, which is pretty awesome. Thank you to subscribers for kicking the extra money in every month to allow us to do this kind of content and a lot more other content that goes back to the community. And I will talk to you next week. Bye.